The next speaker, I'm super excited to have him speak. Luke is a really dear friend of mine. He's a great, great guy, and I'm super excited that you guys get to know him too. Super great communicator. You're going to really be entertained, and he's going to drop some serious knowledge bombs. Luke Humbrecht, everybody.
Good. Check. 1, 2. You guys got me? Good morning. Hey, like Travis said, my name is Luke, and I'm really excited about being here with you guys today. Let's see here. Really excited. What I want to do is I want to tell you about the power of story. I heard that the presenter last night talked a little bit about how story relates to business, but I want to tell you about the power of story and how that relates to the brands that you're building and the products you're trying to sell. Because my understanding is that you're here at this conference because, by and large, you make your living by selling things or convincing people to buy things, right? Or maybe you are building a brand of products that you're selling on Amazon or outside of Amazon, or maybe that's an aspiration that you have to build a brand that actually breaks through the noise. Now, if that's true, that's really exciting, but we all have a huge problem. And it's a problem that's massive, and it affects every single person in this room, including myself. And it's this. We are living in the middle of the largest communications shift in the last 500 years, okay? It's one of the largest revolutions, and we're really just at the beginning of it with the advent of the internet, digital marketing, technology. Now, there's a lot of opportunities for that, right? That's why you're in the room. But it also creates some problems that we have to pay attention to, especially if you're wanting to build a brand that engages customers and to reach people, right? Because we're living in this communication shift, and what's happening is we are the most over-marketed generation in human history. All of us experience about 3,000 marketing messages a day. And what do you think that does to the brain over time? You start tuning out, right? It's all noise. And if you're anything like me, when I get up in the morning and I open my email and I start going through my email, I spend about how much time with each email before I decide if it's worth my time? A split second, right? And I'm just deleting rapid fire. Now, that's what our brains are doing all day long. Now, we're going to get into a little bit more of that in a second here. But that creates a problem because we're living in a world of noise. And what that means is the people that you're trying to reach and the customers that you're trying to reach are not paying attention like they used to, okay? Now, what a lot of brands do is they make a couple mistakes at this point in time. Probably all of us would agree that we're living in a world of noise. We have to change the way we're doing things. We have to change the way we communicate. But one of the mistakes that a lot of companies make is most companies waste an enormous amount of money on marketing. And it's an enormous amount, billions of dollars a year, because we think that the way that we overcome the communications barrier, the noise that we're experiencing, is we just got to do more. We need more marketing. We need to increase our volume, right? We need to do it bigger and better. All right. So most companies waste an enormous amount of money on marketing. We think, gosh, the way we overcome this communication shift, we just need more marketing. And so a lot of brands do this. Maybe your brand's done this. You go down the street to the creative design agency and you hire them to do a website. All right, we're going to switch. So a lot of brands, they'll go down the street to the hip, cool design agency to get a slick new website, right? And because we know that websites are really important. The problem with this is you end up with a website that looks like this. It's really pretty. And they do a good job at getting the right photography and getting it looking good. But the problem is it's completely confusing. Nothing on this page would indicate anything that this company actually does for you. And here's why this happens. The design agency, yeah, they know a lot about Photoshop and Illustrator. They know all the rudiments of WordPress and how to get like a slick looking website. But chances are they've never read a single book on copy or how to write words that actually compel people, and you haven't either, right? I mean, you're good at your product, you're good at your service, you know what you're selling, but very few people actually know what kind of messages move people and convince people to buy. But the reality of the deal is this. People buy products only after they read words or hear words that make them want to buy those products, okay? And it's a universal principle. People don't actually buy the best products and services. They buy the ones that they understand the easiest. They buy the ones that are simple and make sense to them, right? And just for an example of that, it's not quite a messaging branding thing, but close to it. If you guys remember the recent presidential elections, can anybody tell me, what did Jeb Bush want to do for America? Exactly. Nobody knows, right? And the problem is, it's hard because he probably tried to tell us, right? He probably tried to. So did Marco Rubio and all these guys. They wanted to tell us what they were going to do from America, but it was just caught up in the noise. They couldn't find a way to break through the noise. Now, tell me, what did Donald Trump want to do for America? Make America great again. Right. Now, like it or not, I don't want to step on any political toes here, but like it or not, the guy with the clearest message got elected, okay? And there's a big principle here. People don't always elect the best leaders. They elect the ones that have a message that's easier to understand. It's the same thing that goes with great brands. People don't choose the best products and services. They choose the ones that it's really clear, how is this going to allow me to live a better story? And so I want to show you a few things about how the human brain works. And this is really important because if we're going to clarify a message that customers understand, we have to understand our psychological makeup, all right? So we've all been given a brain. You were designed with a brain that really has a couple different functions. You have two different tasks in your brain. Among a lot of things, the simplification is there's two different tasks. The first thing is this. Your brain, its main job is to help you survive and thrive, okay? And literally, you're going about your day, and the dominant questions your brain is asking is, with the messages that I'm experiencing, what here is going to help me make more money, experience safety and security, and help me experience belonging and belong to a family or a tribe or to people I love? We have these instincts, these primitive instincts within us that have been wired into us that are really helping us navigate each day on whether what we're experiencing is going to help us survive and thrive. So Travis bought me a cup of coffee this morning. And at first I was thinking, gosh, what a nice guy. He's such a nice guy. But then I realized, oh, wait a second. He's actually wired to do this, right? So I thought that he was just being a nice guy. It turns out he was buying me a cup of coffee because in a primitive sense, he knows that if he buys me a cup of coffee, I'm going to like him more so that the day when the barbarians come over the hill to invade the cul-de-sac, I'll be there to fight with them, right? Because that's how our brains are working. Now, we're not always consciously thinking like that, but I guarantee you, your brain is scanning every type of message, asking the question, how is this helping me survive and thrive? Now, why does that matter for what we're talking about today? It matters because the moment you go to talk about your business, the moment that you're at a Rockies game or a cocktail party and somebody asks you, what do you do? And if you start talking about, well, my grandfather, started this company 75 years ago, and you start into this story, the person that you're talking to is asking this question, okay, with what you're telling me, how is this helping me survive and thrive, right? And I guarantee you, the fact that your grandfather started the company 75 years ago means nothing for their survival. And if what you're talking about, if your messaging points, it's not immediately clear how it's going to help them live a better story, I guarantee you they're going to tune out. Why? Because their brains do not have the mental energy to keep up with the noise of the world today. The brain doesn't actually have the ability or the capacity to handle a lot of information that's not immediately clear. How is this going to help me? How is your product and service going to help me live a better life? And if you can't tell me that quickly, then this is not worth my time, okay? And so we have to learn how to communicate this stuff quickly. I mean fast. I mean within the first 5 seconds of the moment they come to your website, the moment they hit the product description on your Amazon page, the moment that you meet them at a cocktail party, a potential client, you got to meet them fast. And it really brings us to the second thing the brain does. The second thing the brain was designed to do was to conserve calories. And this goes back to the first one. The brain is designed to conserve calories because its initial impulse is to survive and thrive, okay? So that means that every piece of information that is cluttered or confusing to your customers, you're actually asking their brain to burn calories in order for them to understand what it is you do, okay? Now, when they get to your website, and you're walking through all your services and you're all the stuff, if it's clouded and masked insider language, and chances are, for a lot of us, that's the case. Our whole message is a bunch of insider language. We don't even know it's insider language because we're such insiders, right? You know exactly what it is you do, but when it comes time to communicate it, if you're tripping over your words and trying to find ways to relate, I guarantee you their brain is thinking, I'm not sure this is worth my time, all right? So I want you to imagine it like this. The brain, all day long, is working really hard. It's working hard to make decisions based on surviving and thriving, okay? And so every time they come to your website, handing them a bowling ball, an 8-pound bowling ball, every piece of information you give them in your marketing material, in your conversation, is an 8-pound bowling ball. Now, you can probably carry one bowling ball, be fine. You hand them a second bowling ball, it's getting a little more complicated. Third bowling ball, we got starting to get some problems. So what happens when you hand them the fourth bowling ball? How many do they drop? All of them. And this is really important for us here today. For anybody that's seeking to engage more customers, that you want to build a bigger brand, if the stuff that you're handing your customers is confusing, I guarantee you there's only a certain amount of time before they walk away completely to do business with your competitors who are communicating much more clearly than you are. Okay? So what I want to do, though, is show you, I want to give you a framework, and it's a 7-part framework. And this framework is helping brands and companies clarify their message all across the nation. And some companies are doubling and tripling the revenue because they're learning not just to offer better products and services, but how to communicate what they're offering in a way that people are tuned to hear. Because at the end of the day, one of the mantras we're championing here is this: if you confuse, you'll lose. In today's world of noise, if you confuse, you are going to lose, and you cannot afford to lose. All right? We cannot afford to be confusing our customers. It's not helpful for them, and it's not helpful for us. Okay? And so to talk about this 7-part framework, what I want to do is introduce you to some principles of story. And story is what we would call a sense-making device. What's wild is, because the brain is designed to survive and thrive, you actually spend about 30% of your day daydreaming. 30% of your day daydreaming. And why is that? Because with what your brain is up against on a day-to-day basis, daydreaming is a quick way to escape into a story that makes sense, all right? Stories help us make sense of our lives. Now, if you've ever been to a website and you've been super confused and you left after 8 seconds, there's a reason why. But have you ever wondered how you can go to a theater, you can sit through a 3-hour movie and not check out once? Your brain doesn't daydream once. Why? Because when a good story starts, the brain starts paying attention, okay? The brain is like wired. Like as soon as a story starts, the brain is wired to pay attention. And that's why you'll sit for 3 hours to watch Luke Skywalker sort out his daddy issues and just not even blink, right? Not even get up to go to the bathroom. So sometimes when we start talking about story and this whole story brand, a lot of businesses think, oh, that's great. I would love to tell my brand story better. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not saying that there's not room for that. But what we're talking about primarily is not how you can tell your story better. It's how you can create a story that your customers can enter into so their story can become better. Because at the end of the day, your customer doesn't actually care about your story and your company's story. They only care about how you can help them enter into a better kind of life. So the more time you're actually wasting trying to get them interested in you, the more their brain is thinking, this isn't actually critical to my surviving and thriving, and so I'm going to check out. So this story brand messaging filter, it's a 7-part filter that I want to show you. And the reality is, like every story that you've ever read or experienced or heard is formulaic. And I hate to ruin movies for you and ruin books for you, but basically it's all based on a template. All right, and from here on out, you'll be like, next movie you watch, you'll be looking for these types of things. And I'm sorry if this ruins movies for you, but this is just the way it is. And for screenwriting, if you were actually writing a film, there'd be about 35 elements to this. Now, for the sake of branding and messaging, we're going to talk about 7 of these elements. All right, and these 7 elements that we talk about,
if you want your brand to actually make it in this world, to bust through the noise and to actually reach the customers that you're trying to reach, you actually have to master the messaging on these 7 points, or I guarantee you're going to lose interest of the people you're trying to reach. So the story brand messaging filter is where we're going to start. And really, the first principle is this. Every story starts with a character, okay? If you don't have a character, you don't have a story. In the first 3 minutes of a movie, if you haven't been exposed to a character and what they generally want, what their desire is, it's not an interesting story, okay? You're not going to pay attention very long. Now, as it relates to messaging and branding, really the principle is this. When you agitate a customer's desire, they enter into the story your brand is telling. So story brand marketing principle number 1. When you agitate a customer's desire, they enter into the story your brand is telling. Now, there's 2 general mistakes that brands make when identifying a character. Either they don't define something their character wants, or they talk about too many things that the character might want, okay? So if I came up to you, if I came up to any one of these booths around the room, or if I came up to you and said, hey, tell me about your business, why do your customers come to you? And if you can't tell me right away what customers want from you, what their chief desire is with you, I guarantee you, you are losing money. If you don't know exactly who the main character of your brand is, and what it is that makes them want to come to you, you're gonna miss out. Okay. The other thing, though, is sometimes we identify too many things we want. And some of you guys have companies that are very complex. You offer lots of things. You offer solutions to 50 different things, right? The problem is, on a messaging level, you can really only talk about one thing at a time. You can't talk about all 50 things because that's not an interesting story, okay? It's going to be a cluttered story. Every one of those things is going to be like another bowling ball you're asking them to hold. Now, just imagine going to watch Jason Bourne, and not only did he want to find out who he was, but you also learn within the first 15 minutes, he's on Match.com, he's looking for a soulmate. And he's trying to lose 20 pounds before the month ends, and he's highly interested in adopting a cat. Very quickly the story gets really muddled. And why is that? Because we're really driven to stories where the chief desire is very crystal clear. And the reason this makes sense for the brands that you're building, if you want to retain your customers' attention, you have to be able to know and identify and call out what it is they want, okay? So every story starts with a character, but it moves on from there. A story actually really starts when there's a problem. Any movie that you watch, again, after you know who the character is and what they want, they have to experience a problem. If you don't have a problem, you don't have a good story yet. If there's no problem that's keeping the character from what they want, there's no reason to finish watching that movie, right? And if we stop talking about the problems our characters are facing and our customers are facing, then that's when they stop paying attention. Imagine going to watch the movie Taken. Liam Neeson, imagine if you saw the movie and the plot went like this. He realizes his daughter's kidnapped, so he flies over to Europe. And then within like 20 minutes, you find out it was just a college prank, right? She's okay, she's safe. But while they're over there, they're gonna go shop for cars and look at grad schools. And the next 90 minutes is Liam Neeson and his daughter shopping for cars and looking for grad schools. I mean, is that a movie worth watching? No, right? Because as soon as you resolve the problem, the story ends. So what does that mean for branding and messaging? It means that you have to know what are the problems that are keeping your customers from what it is they actually want, okay? You have to know the problems that keep your customers from what they really want. And the principle is if you stop talking about your customers' problems, they stop paying attention. Every one of you who's trying to communicate something, you're trying to sell something, what you're trying to do is you're helping a customer overcome a problem. And if you can help them overcome a problem, it's going to help them survive and thrive, okay? But it means on a messaging level, you have to know exactly what the problems are. How does it make them feel? What is that problem doing to them? And they will pay attention. But the third thing is this. A story has a character, and the character faces a problem, but a character rarely knows what to do with their own problems. Okay? If a character can like talk themselves out of their problems or fix their own problems, that's usually going to make for a weak story too. Right? That's why storytellers often use this device. They introduce another character. There's different words for it in the story brand messaging framework. We're just going to call that the guide. Okay? A character has to meet a guide who's going to help them overcome that problem. Now, this is where brands make a huge mistake, and you guys probably know this as well. A lot of times, brands think that they're the hero of the story, and so they spend all of their energy trying to convince people how awesome their brand is and why you should purchase from them, right? All of their marketing is, this is how great we are, this is how much we've done, this is how much money we've made, you should do business with us. Well, again, that's not an interesting story for anybody else but you, right? So the paradigm shift that we have to make is in the story that we're telling, your brand is not the hero, your brand is the guide. Your customer is the hero. And you are working, you're a loving, empathetic, authoritative guide, and you're working with your products and services to help them overcome their obstacles so they can get what it is that they want. That's why they came to you in the first place. They didn't just visit your website because they were bored. They visited your website because they had a problem and a desire. And they're wondering, they're asking the question, is there somebody that can help me overcome this desire or overcome this problem? And if it's not clear that you're going to be the one that helps them do that, they're going to check out. And again, they're probably going to move over to do some business with your competitor. So the guide, though, this is your Yoda, right? This is your Obi-Wan Kenobi to the Luke Skywalker. If you've ever watched Hunger Games, the guide would be Woody from Cheers, right? The guide is a character who's positioned to help the hero win the day. Your brand is not the hero, your brand is the guide. But it's not enough just to meet the guide. The guide has to do something. The guide's responsibility is to call the hero to action. Because heroes rarely, again, they rarely take action on their own. They rarely do what they need to do. And so the guide's job is to develop a plan. And this is what we would call a process plan. And the big idea here is life is very complex. Engaging your product and your services, they need to know what their life is going to look like if they decide to lean in to your service, if they decide to buy from you. Now, the principle here is this. Your customer needs an easy step-by-step plan to move forward, or they won't. Imagine showing up to a river. It's a raging river, and you're trying to get your customer, you're trying to get your client across this river. What do? You don't just, you don't bombard them with lots of information about the water and all these types of things. You point to a few stones in the creek, and you say, all right, you're going to step there, then you're going to step there, then you're going to step there, and then you're going to be on the other side of the creek. It's a lot the same with our brands and our services. If we're not spelling out clearly the step-by-step process, again, they're probably going to check out. Now, what does that mean? So if you're a real estate agent, maybe what that could look like would be, okay, step one, we're gonna schedule a consultation. I'm gonna hear about your desires and your dreams. Step two, I'm gonna show you a portfolio of all the houses that meet that criteria. Step three is we're gonna work towards a favorable real estate transaction. You're gonna get into the dream house you've always wanted. All right. Now, how many steps are there actually in real estate transactions? Probably about 52, right? But if you spell out all 52, it's just going to be confusing. Your customer is not looking to be confused. They want to know that you have a plan for them. So that's why we have to think in terms of simple steps. It's going to help them overcome the problem to get to their desired outcome, all right? So we have a plan for them, but it's still not done there. We got to call them to action. So the guide gives them a plan and then calls the hero to action. Use the force, right? You got to use the force. And so when they come to your website or they come to your booth or in your marketing material, you have to have a very clear call to action. And brands make one of two mistakes typically with this. Is either they have too many calls to action. So imagine going to the website and it's download this and buy this and learn more about this and I mean, there's basically 30 or 40 buttons of things that you're wanting them to do. Well, that's all clutter. Those are all bowling balls. They don't know what they're supposed to do. You think it should be clear what they're supposed to do. They don't know what they're supposed to do. I'm shocked by how many websites I go to, and there's no button that tells them exactly what to do. They just bury some, like an email address somewhere in some obscure contact info, section of the website. But what we want, if your customer comes to your website and they don't immediately see a button in the top center and on the top right that says buy now or schedule an appointment, or whatever the call to action would be, I guarantee you they're working. You're burning calories in their brain for them to try to figure out what it is they're supposed to do to respond to your plan so that their life can become better, all right? So oftentimes, the two mistakes that we make here is either there's too many calls to action or the calls to action are too vague, right? I mean, ladies, imagine being at a cocktail party and a guy comes up to you and say you just take a call to action on most websites. A guy comes up to you and says, "Hey, want to get started?" I mean, how would that go? That wouldn't go very well, right? Or one of my favorites, learn more? Those are bad conversation starters, right? That's not how you make babies, right? So you gotta be direct. You gotta be clear. You gotta show them what it is that you want, right? And a lot of business owners, they hesitate to put like a buy now or a call to action on their website because they don't want to come across as salesy. They don't want to be perceived as the guy that's like sawing mattresses in half on late night TV, trying to get you to buy things. But I'm telling you, listen, you got to be clear about what you're inviting them into. And if you're confident in what you're selling, if you know that what you're selling is going to help them and help their story become better, then tell them what it is that you want them to do immediately on their website. You got to call them to action. And then lastly, the last two parts of this are simple. After you call to action, every good story has stakes to them. Every good story is either gonna result in success or failure. Okay? So if the story doesn't have stakes, it's probably not interesting. If the Empire wasn't about to destroy the entire universe, unless Luke Skywalker did something about it, right? Then it just leaves something lacking. And in the same way, for those of us who are communicating about our brands, we have to communicate these things. Now, we have to communicate a picture of success and a picture of failure. First, we'll talk about success. When a customer comes to us, customers want us to cast a vision of what their lives look like if they use our products and services. We have to show them what's possible. We have to show them what they can achieve. We have to show them that it's not just about us winning if they buy our products and services. It's about how they can win, how their life shifts. And a lot of times they're not, we have to be the ones that help create that imagination. Not everybody has the imagination for how this product or this service is going to make their life better or simpler or easier or whatever it is. We have to show them how using our products and services are going to help them survive and thrive. But in the same way, the opposite is also true. Unless there's a potential for failure, then there's really no business doing business with you. If there are no consequences for not doing business with you, then there's no reason to do business with you. Now, you have to get creative when it comes to selling products, but when it comes to services or your brand's offerings, you have to be you don't want to be a fear monger. You don't want to be manipulative and deceptive and talk about how their life is going to be terrible unless they buy now, right? But you do want to show them, like, listen, if you don't want to stay stuck in this any longer, buy now, right? If you want to avoid continually feeling like this, if you want to avoid this particular thing in your life, buy now, or start here, schedule an appointment right now. And here's the deal: when we develop statements on each one of these points, and we start clarifying our message, the message of your brand, I guarantee you, your customers will start paying attention like they haven't before. And so, just to recap here, just a couple things, a couple questions that you have to ask. Number one, What do our customers want? You have to ask that question. You have to know exactly what it is they want when they come to you. Second thing, what are customers' external, internal, and philosophical problems, right? So if you're a lawn care service, their external problem is their grass looks terrible. Their internal problem is they're embarrassed in front of all of their neighbors because their grass looks terrible. The philosophical problem is, gosh, it shouldn't be this hard to have a lawn that looks good, right? It's this bigger issue of like, why is this problem just plain wrong on a cosmic level? And if we're not talking about our customers' problems, they're not listening, all right? The third thing, though, is this. Have we positioned our brand as the guide to the hero? Are you trying to be the hero, or are you positioning yourself as the guide to the hero? Have you created a clear plan for the hero to win the day? 5, are our calls to action clear in all of your marketing materials? Number 6, have we helped our hero imagine how we can improve their lives? Have we identified the consequences we are helping our hero avoid? So those are kind of the seven-part framework, and this has a lot of different applications. This matters when people come to your website. This matters when you're giving your elevator pitch, that you have to stick to the point. You stick to the plot point, and I guarantee you anything that you're talking about your business that is not drawing from these 7 questions, there's a high likelihood that the person you're talking to is going to start tuning out, right? But this matters on a lot of levels. And I know a lot of you guys, you're Amazon resellers. You're writing product descriptions. You're in an Amazon marketplace, and you're trying to write things that will get a customer's attention. Now, fortunately, you're not the only one who's had to learn that. If you guys are familiar with the story of Apple computers, Steve Jobs, back in 1983, Steve Jobs was the CEO of Apple, and he invented the world's most revolutionary computer called the Lisa. Does anybody remember the Lisa? All right. I don't. But Steve Jobs invented the Lisa, right? And it was absolutely hands down the best computer on the market. And Steve Jobs and Apple are thinking, gosh, if we just take the Lisa, if we just tell people what's inside the computer, if we just go and just tell them the product specifications and just describe the computer to them, how could they not want this computer? So that's what they did. So Steve Jobs literally went to the New York Times and took a 9-page ad out about the Lisa. And that 9-page ad was basically all these product specs talking about processing power and RAM and data analysis, right? Just bowling ball after bowling ball after bowling ball, covered in Vaseline, inviting people, buy our computers. This is how awesome it is. Because at that time, they thought, gosh, if our product is good, we'll just tell them what it is, and that should be enough, right? It should be enough. But it's not. Because what happened is the Lisa bombed. It totally bombed. In fact, it bombed so hard, it got Steve Jobs fired from Apple. He got fired after he released the best product he had ever released at that point in time. He got fired. So after he got fired, he went and acquired another computer company called Next. And they weren't doing so well. But he had a guy on his staff that was working with a technology called Pixar. This guy's name was John Lasseter. And at this time, Pixar was not what you know it as. Pixar was just another little computer, a little animation technology. Listerine heard about this technology, Pixar, and they approached John Lasseter and said, hey, would you do a commercial for us? And he said, okay. And so John Lasseter produces a commercial for Listerine, and that year in the entire company, it's the only thing that made Steve Jobs money. Okay? So Steve Jobs goes to John Lasseter and he says, all right, well, I guess you should just keep doing that because that worked. So how about you just keep doing more of the animation stuff? And so that launched John Lasseter into this new career. He starts developing this thing called Pixar. A couple years later, they released their first motion picture film, Toy Story. And we know it's history from there, right? We know where that goes. Pixar becomes this amazing brand of storytellers. And it was wild because Steve Jobs, as he got fired from Apple, and he starts developing this new company called Pixar, it's a bunch of geeks that got surrounded with storytellers. and they started studying story. And arguably, Pixar is writing some of the best stories of our generation. And so imagine what's happening as Steve Jobs and all these geeks are learning about the power of story as it relates to imagination, as it relates to the type of people that we want to become, the things that drive the human spirit, the things that drive persuasion, human consciousness. And so back in the 90s, Steve Jobs gets hired back at Apple, and their first product release, their first ad that they produce, was not a 9-page ad in the New York Times. It was 2 words. It was Think Different. And I don't know if you remember this commercial. I'm not going to show it to you, but you can go Google it. But there's this entire commercial, and it's all of these world leaders, and they're talking about to the crazy ones, to the people who think they can change the world. Those are the ones who typically do. And what he was doing, he did this entire ad. He didn't talk one single time about computers or technology, because what he was doing was he was tapping into the inside, the core of the people that he was trying to reach, because he knew the type of people they wanted to become. He knew that they wanted to be known as change makers, as world changers in their industry, right? So he was using the language about their aspirational identity, the type of people they wanted to be known for, what it looked like for them to win the day, to be a successful hero of their story. Oh, and by the way, we sell computers, right? And how did that work out for Apple? Amazing. Now, I'm not saying that you can just apply the same principles and we can all just, produce, these really abstract, transcendent videos and expect people to respond. But what Steve Jobs learned, I think, is something that's important for all of us to learn. That when it comes time to sell, when it's the products that we're selling, we have to know what drives and what motivates the people that are actually doing the buying. And if we miss out on that, if we miss out on what they really want, the type of person they want to become, then I guarantee you we're missing out on sales and we're missing out on growing our brands and our businesses. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this. If you go to mystorybrand.com, there's a free tool at mystorybrand.com where you can walk through all 7 of these questions and actually have a place where you can, it'll save all the information. You can develop what we would call a brand script. A brand script is walking through all of the different 7 elements. For really every one of your products, every one of your services, you need a brand script. You need a brand script that houses your entire company or your business, and then one for each division or product that you sell, okay? Because it's going to help you clarify their message in a way that people can understand. Now, also, I have a company called VoiceCraft, and I actually help walk businesses through the story brand framework, just like today. If you go to voicecraft.net, there's a free PDF today that you can download, 5 elements of a website that breaks through the noise. And really, there's going to be 5 things that if you just sign up for the little email list, you can unsubscribe later if you just don't want another email list. It's totally fine. But if you download the PDF, you're going to walk through 5 things that your website must include if you want it to break through the noise. We've helped tons of companies do this. Here's a company in Texas. Tell me, after 5 seconds, if you can figure out what this company does. Exactly. Super confusing. Now, it's a very successful company, hundreds of millions of dollars. And they do a very complex organization. But what they do is they help business owners, specifically like farmers, strengthen their business through different loans, through reselling huge commercial farm equipment. So they redid their website using the story brand principles. And this is the second homepage they came up with. 5 ways we make your company stronger, okay? And it walks through the different things that they offer, but they made it really clear right up front. It's a really strong tagline. This is what we're going to do. What is a successful story for you? We know that you want your company to be stronger. You want to leave a legacy for your kids. That's what that photo is saying. We're going to help you do that. We're trusted guides. We're going to help you make your company stronger. So that's kind of how that works on a very simple level. And just to end here, our time together, I'm going to be around also at the panel discussion where we can talk about some other questions. Travis, how much time do we have?
You've got about 10 minutes, so if you'd like to take some questions.
Okay, sweet, yeah. So based on what I said, do you guys have any questions that we can use up the rest of our time with? We have a microphone around the room.
I guess you just did such a great job of telling the story that everyone knows exactly what to do next.
Exactly.
Any questions, guys? All right.
I think this is great information, but I'm struggling. How could this relate to me as an Amazon seller that just sells books? Are there pieces of this that I can take?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you selling books? You're listing books as products on Amazon? Absolutely. I think you have to remember that, I mean, Amazon is its own world, and you're competing with all of these other sellers, probably with each other, but you're all writing something about your products that you're selling. And I think that what's really important, I know that a lot of Amazon sellers end up trying to load their product pages with keywords and trying to do all this SEO stuff, and that's fine, but you have to lean into, focus on, for every product listing, you have to focus on what are the features, features and benefits. What are the key features? Why is this product, talk about the specifics of the product, but talk about how that feature is going to help them overcome a problem, deliver a better story. Now with books, I would say with nonfiction, that's really easy. You talk about, you take, a lot of times you can take the product description on the back of the book and talk about how is this book going to actually help you overcome an obstacle so that you can become who you want to be or do something that you wanted to do or learn something that you need to know, right? And so you focus on that in the product description. I think a lot of times when I've seen Amazon product descriptions, sometimes they're so clouded up with keywords, everyone's trying to cram as many keywords in the product description that they lose focus on the simplicity of what is the actual product and how is it designed to make my life better.
Yep. All right, over here.
I really like the message, a great presentation. And I'm just wondering if you have any like recommendation for books that kind of just that make you an expert as you are today.
Yeah. The book that I should have referenced, and I do have a few copies with me, it's called Building a Story Brand. The author is Donald Miller. Find it on Amazon, right? I have a few copies with me, but you can certainly download that online as well. He walks through all these points, but on a more detailed level, and he's going to give you an imagination of what it looks like to really take this framework to apply it to your brand on a detailed level. So I would definitely recommend that book.
Hey, right here.
What was that? Building a Story Brand. The author is Donald Miller.
Do you use or recommend infographics at all to tell a story with pictures?
Infographics for a website? Yeah, I think visual representation is always really smart. If you have a talented designer, as long as it's running through the filter of, is this infographic actually helping clarify what I'm trying to say? Or do they have to burn brain calories to figure out what's happening in this image? Do you know what I'm saying? I've seen some infographics that are so, it's technically creative, the illustration techniques are awesome, but then I'm spending just as much time trying to figure out, okay, what does this cool cartoon mean, As long as it's applied to that principle, I think it's a wonderful technique to break through noise, definitely.
All right, we have time for one more. Any other questions? All right, well, Luke, thank you. You guys give it up for Luke. Great job, man.